Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge? What if Transmigrated to Medieval Pokemon World? What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 261, The Uzumaki Ask for Help. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. A group of Uzumaki arrived at the gates of Konoha at this moment, while the guards were surprised by their presence. Hello, friends of Konoha. May we speak with the Hokage? We request an urgent meeting. One of the older Uzumaki in the group spoke, while a ninja looked at his companion, nodding for him to head to the Hokage's building, and so he did. The ninja returned shortly after. You have permission to enter the village, please follow me. An Anbu ninja said beside the gate ninja who returned to his post, as the group of 10 Uzumaki entered the village. They headed to the Hokage's building, entering the place with the Hokage receiving them immediately. Hokage-sama. They greeted him respectfully. What brings the Uzumaki clan to the village? The Hokage asked, although he already knew they were coming through the border guard, as they allowed the Uzumaki clan to pass since they were allies of Konoha. We're facing a serious problem, Hokage. We're seeing a lot of movement around Uzushiogakure. We're suspecting we're being targeted by at least 2 nations. He began. Why do you think that? The Hokage asked in a calm tone, while the Uzumaki looked at the Hokage strangely. Sorry, Hokage, but don't you know about the movements happening in the other countries? We're receiving reports of activity from several nations. Something is happening, all the nations are preparing for war. How does Konoha not know? The eldest Uzumaki couldn't help but speak a little louder than he should as he said what should have been obvious. He couldn't believe Konoha could be so naive to what was happening. His raised voice alerted the Anbu, who quickly spoke from the ceiling, facing the Hokage. Calm down. The Hokage said in a serious tone, while the ninjas nodded and disappeared, leaving only the Uzumaki cautiously watching the Hokage. You seem very concerned, and Konoha will not leave you adrift no matter what you've seen. You are our allies and I will check with my border ninjas to investigate the actions of the other countries. Is that acceptable? The Hokage spoke as the Uzumaki, still cautious, nodded at the Hokage's humble tone, seeming concerned. You must be tired. There are some vacant houses in the Senju clan. Kushina Uzumaki may allow you to pass through the clan's barrier and stay in some of the houses. The Hokage said as the Uzumaki nodded, lowering their heads. They left the Hokage building shortly after, while Danzo entered right after the Uzumaki had exited the place, as the Hokage asked all the Anbu to leave them alone. You certainly are a heartless person, Hiruzen, saying things you can't fulfill. Rather hypocritical of you, don't you think, giving them false hope? Danzo spoke in a tone of satisfaction. The village is always more important than everything else. Hiruzen said while looking out the window. Even if we have to sacrifice our allies, deceiving them to the slaughter. He said with no pride in his voice, yet fully aware of his sins, both present and those to come. You're right, the village is more important and removing the Uzumaki from this world will be better for everyone. After all, they could be our future enemies. Danzo said, walking to the window and speaking in a serious tone. You've always wanted this more than I have, Danzo. Hiruzen said to his old companion. Even so, you agreed too. Don't come at me with morality when you're the one sacrificing them, Hiruzen. Danzo said. Hiruzen said nothing, and more importantly, he didn't deny Danzo's words. Now we must be extremely careful not to affect the plan. You know it's a poor choice to bring them close to the Uzumaki. The Jinchuriki might have overheard something from that boy. Aren't you concerned about that? Danzo spoke again to the Hokage. The Uzumaki are still, in theory, Konoha's greatest allies. Pushing them away would be bad. After all, we still need a few things from them. Hiruzen said. I think we should make some changes. All of this has a chance of backfiring on us with the end of the Uzumaki. I still believe that boy knows too much after reading that scroll, and asking us to do something months ago. He'll surely find out about the Uzumaki, and that will be a huge problem. Danzo said with suspicion. What kind of changes are you talking about? Hiruzen asked. Perhaps it's time we separate him from the Jinchuriki. We should force the Kyuubi's chakra out of the seal and push her into madness. She'll cause damage to the village that can't be ignored, and then we'll remove her to the root and keep her as the weapon she was meant to be. Danzo said, admiring the Sand Village for keeping their Jinchuriki locked up and releasing them with weakened seals in the middle of war to transform into bijou and kill all enemies. It would be even better if he could control the Kyuubi himself, but he needed the Sharingan for that. However, the plan to implement Mokuton was not ready. The Hokage hadn't denied it. He seemed thoughtful, accepting Danzo's suggestion to analyze it. I don't think that's a good idea, he said at last. So we're going to let the boy keep constant contact with her? Let him use the Jinchuriki against the village when something happens and he decides to rebel against Konoha? Danzo argued. Things won't get that extreme, and I believe Minato is someone who loves the village. If we take Kushina out of the picture, he might become a rebel. Hiruzen said, knowing how dangerous a ninja like Minato could be if he turned against the village. Then tell me how you're going to handle him not accepting the village's decision regarding the Uzumaki. And even if we eliminate him, the Jinchuriki might go mad in that moment. They're both dangerous, Hiruzen, we should eliminate them both at once. Danzo gave his opinion once more, insisting on exterminating Minato. I'll have to think about it, Hiruzen said. And we should act as fast as we can. Minato is alone with this information, but he could very well make it public. With his reputation, that would be a danger to us. Danzo had seen Minato as a threat ever since he slipped from his hands, refusing to join the route many years ago, before the boy actually went to war. And Minato had become a threat. He now had more chances than anyone else to become the next Hokage, now that Tsukumo was no longer an active ninja. Answer me one thing, Hiruzen. Danzo spoke again. When you retire, who do you think will take your place? You know the village will very likely want it to be Minato. After all, he still holds the status of a hero in many events, from attacks inside the village, missions, and his feats in the war. Even after so much time, the people haven't forgotten him. He showed he wanted to help the Uzumaki. If he were Hokage, he would help them and lead Konoha into another war, with a high chance we'd come out worse than the last one. He could bring Konoha to its destruction. Is that what you want for your successor? Or do you want to choose a strong new leader, someone who will always put Konoha first? Danzo knew he was striking at Hiruzen's emotional side. Hiruzen loved Konoha above all else, even more than his own family. Danzo was no different, but he wanted that hat, and he would do whatever it took to eliminate any candidates in his path. After all, no one but him could lead Konoha to its peak. So you think we should eliminate him? Hiruzen looked seriously at Danzo and asked. He agreed with Danzo's thoughts, perhaps Minato wasn't the best choice for the next Hokage, and Hiruzen would do everything to ensure the next generation had a leader who would bring prosperity to Konoha. Yes, the time has come. At the same time, we must ensure we do the same with the Jinchuriki, for she could become a threat the moment Minato is eliminated. Danzo said with venom. I understand. I'll think about it, was all Hiruzen said. Don't be a fool, Hiruzen. We must get rid of the boy. He already has Kage-level strength, and maybe not even my team could handle him. We'll need to combine forces if necessary," Danzu said as he moved toward the door. Hiruzen remained deep in thought, while a root Umbu ninja appeared, stopping behind Danzu. "Danzu-sama. The Umbu team is returning to Konoha," he informed Danzu, who turned his gaze back to Hiruzen. "He's back. We can't allow him to make contact with the Uzumaki," Danzu warned as he left the room. Hiruzen sighed, then made a hand sign for the Umbu to return to the room. "I want one of you to do me a favor," he said as they all knelt before him. "Yes, Hokage-sama," they all responded in unison. "Summon Makoto Uchiha and Hanabi Hyuga. Tell them I need to call them for an urgent mission," he said, wanting to force them onto a mission so they too wouldn't have contact with the Uzumaki or possibly pass on any information to Minato. It seemed a bit paranoid. After all, Minato had shown nothing to suggest he was a traitor or a conspirator against the village's interests. Still, the Hokage wanted to take every precaution. Meanwhile, Minato arrived in the village a short time later, before being approached by another Umbu group. "You've been called for an urgent mission regarding ninjas appearing at the border of the Land of Wind," the leader said, with Lumum taking the scroll and seeing that it was an urgent order. Minato thought the Hokage could have sent another squad, but chose his instead, which was a bit suspicious, but he accepted, as he couldn't refuse anyway. He left the area near the village and headed southwest, waiting for them to set up camp. Even while being watched by his entire team, he used the teleportation technique, leaving a clone so fast in his place that no one noticed. Minato returned to the village. He was in his apartment, first checking for any presence he could sense. But there was no one, not even Makoto. Then he found a letter from her on the table. She had been chosen for a messenger mission directly to Tsunade. "Something's off," Minato muttered, beginning to concentrate and sense the entire village. "I see. They're definitely being cautious," Minato murmured again, now aware of the Uzumaki presence in the Senju compound. Minato quickly disappeared from his apartment, entering the area where he'd been meeting with members of various clans over the past months. It was safe there, and no one would sense his presence, as he began writing on a scroll, sending it off somewhere. He needed to contact a few people to help him. First, he had to warn the Uzumaki somehow and speak with them, but he couldn't show himself, as his presence could be detected. He summoned the scroll and received a response. He nodded and began writing on several scrolls, sending them to different places in the village using his Hiraishin. Meanwhile, Minato's clone remained with his team, maintaining the disguise as they camped before heading to the mission area. His original self was holding another meeting with Konoha's major clans. Today was the perfect occasion. Chapter 262: Plans and Problems in the Southwest. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. A group of people began to arrive at the secret location within the Senju clan, where Minato was, along with all the village clan leaders he had been meeting with over the past few months, those from the first meeting, along with Makoto's father, with whom Minato spoke later. An Uzumaki appeared a moment later, after Minato had spoken with the Aburame clan leader and secretly sent a bug to the house where the Uzumakis were staying within the Senju clan, carrying a message. They sought out Kushina, went to her house, and took Minato's kunai, allowing him to bring them there as well, protected from any censor, ears, or eyes of the village. That Uzumaki was not the same person Minato had spoken with before, but she was aware of the conversation Minato had more than a year ago, as she was his master. Minato asked him to explain the situation, with everyone listening attentively, their gazes cautious and worried, each one having their own thoughts as they heard the Uzumaki's account of the situation on the border and his request for help from Konoha. Hiruzen, on the other hand, didn't seem to care. "This also concerns us," Minato said at one point in the conversation. "The village is not preparing for a possible war. And if all four nations that plan to attack Uzushiogakure suddenly turn against Konoha, we'll be attacked from all directions. The same argument Hiruzen used to betray our allies can very well be used to break the agreement and bring the hatred of the five nations upon us." This triggered a look of alertness and caution in everyone. "But more importantly, we have to try to convince the village, even if that suggests war. That's how Konoha has always had to act. Today it may be an allied clan outside the country. Tomorrow it could be our own children who will be sacrificed in the name of peace. Is that what you want? Is that what you expect for your children and grandchildren? He said in a serious tone, while many remained silent, thinking about it. The Uchiha clan is being targeted, because some Nukanins were seen at the border. They're accusing us of things that have nothing to do with us, said Mazu Uchiha, as the pressure against the Uchiha clan within the village leadership had intensified significantly recently. If it's not a coup, I agree we should act, said Shiran Nara, Shikaku's father. Yes, political pressure could be beneficial, another responded, agreeing. But if we truly want to help the Uzumaki, we can't just send our ninjas outside the country. Fighting against 4 nations is not a simple matter. This sounds like madness, another leader murmured. Yes, on that, I agree, Minato said at that moment. But I am certain we can shelter the Uzumaki in the land of fire. And Uzumaki was about to respond, clearly not wanting to leave behind their homeland, when Minato continued. I can even understand that you love your land. But what's the point, if everyone dies? I will also not leave the village in the land of fire at the mercy of an attack from 4 nations just to protect you, sacrificing our own people. That is not going to happen, he said firmly. It was a solid point. He would never let Konoha be attacked to protect another Uzumaki clan, obviously. The place went silent, and he continued. If you truly want to survive, you'll have to live within the land of fire. And we can wage the same kind of war we fought in the past. We've already defeated the 4 nations. We can do it again, Minato said, as the place fell into silence. But to throw us into another war like that. Lord Minato, it will kill thousands of us again. No one has recovered from the last one of the leaders murmured, torn between truly helping an ally or preserving peace, sharing a thought Hiruzen once had. Starting another war? That doesn't seem like a smart thing to do, sacrificing thousands of our ninjas again to help them. I don't think that's the right path, another leader said harshly. So that means we're disposable to you, the Uzumaki raised his voice at that moment, exclaiming to everyone present with anger. Calm down. But let's be honest as well, Minato turned to the Uzumaki. You're still standing precisely because Konoha is your ally. Since you never wanted to bind yourselves to the land of fire, you became an easy target, just like what's happening now. And without Konoha's protection, you would have been destroyed a long time ago. Minato was harsh with the member of the Uzumaki clan too, but there were things he had to say no matter what. He paused before continuing. But don't get me wrong. I'm being logical here, I'm not saying the Uzumaki should sacrifice themselves for Konoha. Still, we're allies. And if you want to survive, this is the most rational way we can offer. You must bind yourselves to the land of fire and abandon your land. As painful as it may be, your people are more important than the land. And you'll be well received here. He finished, while the Uzumaki remained silent. Minato turned back to the leader who had said provoking another war wasn't a good idea. And about the war, trust me, they've always existed, he said. Think about it, if the other 4 nations see Konoha weakened, and that will happen when Uzushiogakure is destroyed, they will all turn their weapons on Konoha. A 3rd world war is already at our doorstep. The question is, will we face it as Konoha shinobi protecting our allies, or will we just keep closing our eyes like cowards chasing a false peace? Minato said, looking at each of them. The discussion continued, with everyone arguing, while Minato listened carefully. Shikaku, as always, was very logical with the details and answered some of the others' questions, confirming his reputation within the Nara clan, with words of wisdom. In the end, Minato sent everyone back to their clans, while recovering some chakra using Sage Mode, putting on his mask and switching places with a clone that was near the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Wind, resuming command of his squad as usual the next day. They headed to the border, encountering a Konoha ninja team already investigating the area. It's a squad, they said as Minato, along with the others, appeared. What's the situation? Minato asked from behind his mask. It's a bit hard to explain, we went to the village, but didn't even collect the bodies. You should go, and you'll understand, one of them said, as Lumen and the others guided the team to the site, finding an entire village dead. This, Lumen murmured, upon checking the place filled with corpses. The people died from poison, said one of the ANBU from Minato's team. They were hit with needles, some stuck in the bodies, others embedded in the wooden houses. But one question. These strings say they're puppets. That's why the mission came in as men from the land of wind crossing the border. Another member of the ANBU team commented. I've fought many sand ninjas before, and there's no doubt whoever did this, it was them. Minato remained silent as he observed the area. It looks like many bodies are missing. There are fewer corpses than houses in this place. Whoever attacked them wanted them dead, but also wanted to leave the bodies intact. That's why they used poison needles. How strange. Minato commented. What should we do, Commander? Another member asked. We'll follow the trail. We need to find whoever did this, whether it's a person or a group. But first, search the region. I want any trace you can find, Minato said as they began scouring the area. Minato stayed in the village, sitting on top of a house, trying to sense anything with his observation haki, closing his eyes in deep concentration, beginning to hear echoes in that place, on a more spiritual plane. A sudden burst of smoke occurred, as a puppet appeared to everyone in the village, who had been having a normal day. Then came the screams of panicked people, followed by the sounds of needles whistling through the air, striking people as they collapsed to the ground. Minato remained there, watching everything, searching for anything that could lead to the culprit. Then, when silence returned and Minato knew the entire village was dead, with people agonizing for minutes before dying, footsteps began to echo, indicating only one person among the corpses. I think this number of bodies is good enough to continue the research. The voice came to Minato, and he couldn't tell whether it was young or old, male or female. This, he murmured, opening his eyes, unable to identify the direction of the voice. It came from the entrance of the village, facing the border, where he could sense a spiritual presence and find the trail of the culprit like fragments of their spirit. I feel like I've encountered this person before. Minato couldn't know everything, but his intuition, enhanced by the observation haki, suggested it. Alert everyone. Tell them to follow me, Minato said, notifying an ANBU nearby, as he advanced into the forest, following that faint spiritual presence. The ninja who had done this was good. They had erased all traces, as if there were a group behind them just to do that. And, sensing only one voice, Minato imagined it could be just one person, perhaps using their own puppets behind them to clean up every trace. This task was supposed to be handled by another ANBU team responsible for that border area. Minato's team's operating zone was farther north, between the land of waterfalls and part of the land of rain. But he wouldn't abandon his duty. Seeing all those people slaughtered like animals was far from acceptable, so he moved quickly, with his team members joining him shortly afterward, one by one. Commander, did you find the trail? They asked, curious since they hadn't found anything, and Minato had, without even leaving the village. Minato nodded. It's a lead. But let's check it, he said, as they continued toward the border, until they finally reached the limits of the Land of Fire, where some Konoha patrols began to approach them. But he ignored them and stopped, dropping to the ground, finally finding a flaw in the enemy's plan, the trail they had all been searching for, with small marks on the ground and on the trees in that area. Here, the culprit no longer seemed to care. After cleaning the entire path from the village to this point, he no longer appeared concerned, confident that no one would be able to track him. Minato looked ahead. There was still forest, roughly a kilometer of it, known as the neutral zone, the border, before finally reaching the desert of the Land of Wind. He simply sighed, knowing he couldn't cross that area without the Hokage's authorization, which was deeply frustrating. We can't go any further. What will we do? One ninja asked Minato. We have no choice. Let's write a report. I'll deliver it personally, Minato said. As some patrol teams reached them, he asked them to explain the situation, while Minato returned to the village. A moment later, he came back with a sigh. The Hokage didn't give us permission to continue, only to remain in the region for a few days. in case there's another attack by whoever committed the last one, he said, disappointed. After all, he had clearly shown his willingness to continue. He was excellent at infiltration, capable of operating alone and tracking whoever did this, being a disciple of Jiraiya. But the Hokage did not agree, since the villages were mobilizing their armies, and Minato had no choice but to obey. Even if he found the culprit, Hiruzen would treat him as a rogue ninja at this point. Chapter 263, Status Quo. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. A few days had passed, and without Konoha's authorization to secretly invade the Land of Wind, they couldn't go after the culprit if there was still any trace of her. All they could do was remain at the border, while trying to find any indication that another attack might occur. In the end, other ANBU teams responsible for the region appeared and relieved Minato's team, stating they would take over the investigation from there. It was also said in the Hokage's message that he himself had sent a letter to Tsunegakure, stating that he would demand explanations, because ninjas apparently from the Sand Village were attacking Fire Country civilians and stealing their bodies. He firmly declared that this would not go unpunished and demanded that the culprit be handed over. Minato doubted that would really happen. Konoha didn't want to create tensions with potential leaf ninjas invading another country, especially now that everyone was preparing their armies to attack Uzushiogakure. In the end, Minato returned to Konoha, finally having a few days of rest, since there was no longer any sign of the Uzumaki. They were gone. Meanwhile, Tsunade was checking the latest diagnostics while Nawaki lay on a stretcher. Now, not just with one arm, but with two. Although the new one was entirely made of wood and completely bandaged. He opened and closed his hand slowly, controlling it very well. "How are you feeling?" she asked her brother, while Shizen also jotted down some observations nearby. The girl was young, but Tsunade had chosen her not only for being Dan's niece and Suna's cousin, but for being extremely dedicated. "I'm fine. I can feel the chakra flow, it's stable now. I feel like I can do jutsus with both hands without any problem," Nawaki commented, still closing his hands and smiling. Over the past few weeks since receiving the new arm, he had been training to form seals with both hands, able to create his jutsus again. But he didn't have proper chakra flow, and they had to work on that while he tested, failed, and tried again. It had been tough weeks, but now he said he was ready. "Great. Let's do the final tests and go back to Konoha. I got a message from Minato, and things are getting tense in the village. The Uzumaki have already left Konoha, without any help from those old men." Tsunade murmured, a bit angrily. "All right. Let's do this, sister," Nawaki commented, ready to begin the tests. Aside from that, Tsunade returned to her daughter, sitting with Hanabi and Mikoto as they talked. "You can go back to Konoha with your friends now. I'll stay a little longer with your uncle to test the last phase of the arm. We need a representative of the Senju clan in the village, even to help Minato in case the elders try to act against him. After all, it's quite possible that someone will start reporting the secret meetings he's been having with several clan leaders to pressure the village leadership," Tsunade informed. "All right, Mom," Suna replied. While Mikoto and Hanabi got ready to leave the next moment, Suna said goodbye, heading back to the village. Leaving the middle of the country, and Tsunade went to train once more with her brother, together with Shizune. Minato, now back in the village, after talking a bit with Kushina, secretly took her, as he always did, to Mount Mayaboku to train her control with the Nine-Tails Fox chakra, while he also trained his haki. The observation haki was the one he had developed the most. His armament haki had improved a lot, but he still couldn't advance to the last two stages. As for Conqueror's haki, he barely had an idea how to train it, but he spent his days trying to practice it, at least to summon it, so he could control it from then on. It was still a challenge that Minato wanted to develop. Meanwhile, Kushina was also becoming more efficient in controlling the Nine-Tails chakra cloak. Minato even decided to teach techniques he had never considered showing the girl, but, knowing she was capable, and now being outside the village, he finally introduced the Rasengan to her. This would help her in the eventual creation of a Baijidama the day Kushina became a perfect Jinchuriki, Minato also explained to her. He was watching Kushina as she tried to create the Rasengan and thought about the conversation he had with Mito before she disappeared. She had handed over the key to the seal to release Kurama, since Minato had said he intended to do so, making the process easier by having the key, rather than simply trying to destroy the current seal. But Minato didn't act immediately to break the seal and make Kushina a perfect Jinchuriki. He first wanted to see Kurama's intentions, how she was behaving toward them and, especially, toward Kushina. Because he would hardly go through with it if she presented any danger. And he wasn't Naruto to use the famous talk no jutsu. He never believed everything could be resolved just through conversation, but he hoped his words would truly reach Kurama. And if she had given her own chakra to Kushina, it meant she was open to trusting Minato's words. That was already a great step in their relationship. He brought more people to Mount Mayaboku as soon as the girls arrived in the village after their mission. Minato trained Makoto there, making her exhaust all the power of her eyes. Minato truly intended to implant the new eyes in place of the two worn-out pairs of his fiancée. At the same time, he felt something strange in the Uchiha. He just didn't know exactly what it was, but it was there the entire time, according to his intuition in hockey. It was a somewhat torturous process for the girl, but Makoto remained firm and trusted Minato's plan when he told her she could awaken her eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and had already spoken to Tsuna about replacing the girl's eyes. Tsunade also went to Mount Mayaboku, while Minato practiced with her using both Sannin modes. They fought each other, and her mode resembled Tsunade's 100 seal jutsus and even Hashirama's Sage mode, which involved several markings across the body, especially the face. They fought the entire time using only brute strength. Hanabi was no exception and trained with her jutsus and even her summoning, while Minato summoned Gamabunta so they could have a colossal battle between Hanabi and her summoning, to practice fights involving summons, potentially destroying the terrain there. Fukasaku was a bit lost. Minato kept bringing girls to train at Mount Mayaboku. Although he wasn't against it, it was quite strange to see explosions, even though Minato always trained outside the main area of the Toads, while they kept fighting with massive techniques for several days, during the breaks he always had between missions. While things continued in Konoha, the other nations were far from silent. Their armies were beginning to move in the village centers. The village of the Mist had finally received word that they would launch an attack against Uzushiogakure. At that time, the Bloody Mist already existed. Zabuza Momochi, a young boy from the village who hadn't even entered the ninja academy, watched as the third Mizukage gave his speech. Mist ninjas were present, along with the population, while everyone could see the Jinchuriki of the Seven Tails and the Jinchuriki of the Six Tails, alongside the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, all prepared to launch a powerful attack against their named enemy. Several clans were also gathered, as they held many privileges in the village due to their Kekei Genkai. This was the peak of the Mist Village, considered the most powerful after Konoha, and young Zabuza's eyes were fixed directly on the swordsman of the Mist, dreaming of one day reaching that rank. "What are you looking at, Zabuza?" "Thinking about becoming a great ninja," a young boy said beside him, laughing. Zabuza just glanced at his best friend, shrugging. His personality was closed off. "You could say that," was all he replied. "You're always like this." The boy murmured and looked at the stage, between them and thousands of people. "I don't know. I still think it's kind of wrong. We're going to war, and they're preparing to attack a single isolated clan," the boy commented, while Zabuza gave him a harsh look. "Don't question the village's orders, you idiot," Zabuza responded. The same could be said of the other villages. Meanwhile, the village of the Sand was also gathering. Shio ignored the speech of the third Kazekage and looked seriously at the young man approaching her near the stage, due to her position. "Where have you been all this time?" she asked the young man sternly. "I was doing some things in the north," he replied, while she looked at him suspiciously. "Why did you throw away the puppets your parents made after you improved them yourself?" "I found them tossed in the basement." "You treated them like disposable pieces." "You should have told me," Shio said, displeased. "Because they're just puppets, Grandma." "They're not living beings," he replied coldly. "At first, I was happy to have my father and mother. But as time went on, I realized they were just objects. And nothing more than that. Tools of war," Sasori said in the same cold tone. "Whatever. Just don't disappear like that again. The Kazekage wanted to know where you've been. He's complaining that you've been too absent lately. We need you. The village needs you. You're the son of two great ninjas, don't forget that, she said seriously. Sasori merely nodded, without showing any evident emotion, while his gaze returned to the Kazekage, who continued his speech, his plan to attack Uzushiobakure, allying with several other countries. Sasori's eyes looked at that man with a cold gleam. In the village of the cloud, the Reikage was giving his speech with everyone gathered. That's right. Let's go. A voice interrupted him at that moment, while everyone looked to the side. Next to his son, also on the stage, a boy began to rap. He was the new Jinchuriki of the Eight Tails, Killer Bee, known as A's partner, who had been chosen for the role. Hey, can you stop that, Bee? The Reikage heard his son scolding Bee, before punching him on the head. That hurt, Killer Bee simply replied, ending with a rap, as he sighed and turned his attention back to the crowd, listening to the ongoing speech outlining the village's plan. In the village of Stone, the speech was the same. Meanwhile, Anoki, the Tsuchikage, floated above the crowd. Far from there, a ninja picked up a scroll after writing his final words and handed it to a toad. Take this to Konoha, the disguised ninja, who was none other than Jiraiya said, while still looking out the window at the speech about the attack on Uzushiobakure. He had been investigating this for over 8 months, ever since he finally left the land of rain, with his pupils ready to survive on their own and even try to change their village and maybe the world, just as he hoped. Nagato was one of the two who still held the hope of fulfilling his prophecy. He had 2 candidates for it, Minato or Nagato, confident that one of them would bring great change to the ninja world. When he was finally going home, to see all his friends and students, he was immediately approached at the border and couldn't even return to the village. He received orders from the Hokage. He had to investigate all the nations and the troop concentrations they were forming. Konoha could become the target of a new war. He had no choice but to carry out his mission. Despite that, he later discovered they weren't planning to attack Konoha, but rather Uzushiobakure. The speech ended as all the stone ninjas shouted. Jiraiya remained there, standing by the window, brow furrowed, hoping to help his allies, still unaware of Hiruzen's true plans. Chapter 264, The Despair of the Uzumaki Clan. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. Sorry, but the Hokage is busy. He can't see you at the moment, an ANBU ninja informed. What? This is the 3rd time we've come here and he still refuses to see us. The representative of the Uzumaki clan stood in front of the Hokage building, looking at the ANBU ninja who had just informed them that the Hokage was unavailable at the moment. Unfortunately, he has responsibilities to take care of the village. There are other problems to deal with right now, the ANBU said. You've got to be kidding, right? We're in a critical situation. It's not possible that you don't know. We've come here to warn you weeks ago, and no one wants to investigate, the ninja from Uzushio said in frustration. I ask that you keep your tone calm, Mr. Uzumaki. You're not in Uzushio, the ANBU threatened. The Uzumaki ninja, as much as he didn't want to let it go, had to simply turn around and walk away with heavy steps along with the other 9 ninjas from the clan who accompanied him, all sharing the same kind of feeling. He had been in the village for at least 4 days, and the Hokage was always busy and unable to meet with them, always an excuse. So, he didn't see you again. Tsunade found them at her house when they returned to the Senju clan, where they were staying since it was the closest to the Uzumaki clan in the Leaf Village. There's always an excuse. Haru Uzumaki, the leader of the group of 10 representatives, muttered with much frustration. Tsunade just listened as they went to the house where they were staying. The situation was clearly becoming dangerous, and this was the 2nd visit the Uzumaki were making to the village, while their evidence was being practically ignored. We can't do anything but watch them being treated this way, Nowaki said beside Tsunade. At this point, he had already returned to the village not long ago. While his secret was still hidden, no one knew he had an arm again and that it had been developed from Mokutan, which would certainly drive the elders frustrated and crazy, since Danzo was trying to do the same research but failed, still lacking Hashirama's cells. He failed in his attempt to steal the body from the first Hokage's grave in the Senju clan, with some of his ninjas disappearing while Minato suggested and Tsunade ended up using her grandfather's cells to make Nawaki's arm. Is Minato out of the village? Tsunade asked, while Nawaki nodded. From what Tsuna said, every time the Uzumaki are here, the village sends him far away. They want to avoid a meeting between the two sides, he informed. I see. She murmured. Anyway, Nawaki, I want to attend the next meeting, she said, while the boy nodded. During the night, the leaders were summoned again to the isolated area inside the Senju clan, with Minato using his spacetime jutsu, and Nawaki calling Tsunade. Once again, they discussed what was happening. More and more, the clan leaders were becoming uneasy, discussing the village's behavior. When everyone left, only Minato, Tsunade, and Nawaki remained. Do you really think none of them will rat you out? Tsunade asked in a stern tone. I can feel their emotions. Certainly, there are many who indicate they will, but it's still hard to say, Minato said thoughtfully. I can't do anything until they act, Minato added. You have to be careful. I've been hearing the rumors ever since I came back to the village with my brother, she said seriously, while some things were being said among the civilians. It had started circulating among them about a possible failure on Minato's part regarding the search for the culprit behind a massacre that occurred in the southwest, implying that he was incompetent just as he had let some Uchiha ninjas become rogue. Minato knew very well that those spreading this wanted to destroy his name, claiming that the war hero couldn't defeat threatening enemies to the village, nor save people or even avenge them, with more than 200 dead. Even though he could defend himself, he didn't care, as there wasn't much he could do against some civilians placed by the elders to spread the idea that he was unfit to govern. And the village certainly wasn't innocent anymore, so it wasn't even worth trying to explain that the Hokage had forbidden them from advancing into the Land of Wind after the culprit, let alone explain the existence of Zetsu and that Madara was still alive. Surely questions would come about how he knew that without proof. Some citizens did defend him, but the power of the elders was stronger and more influential among the population. Not that he could do much, or that they even cared, as they were about to do something even worse. But Minato would certainly take revenge once and for all, before having to move on to the next plan. It doesn't matter now, was all Minato said in response to Tsunade. Just be careful, Tsunade said, while Minato nodded before disappearing from the place. The next day, the Uzumaki finally managed to get an audience with the Hokage, who maintained a friendly and calm tone, apologizing for not being able to meet them in the past few days. He listened to their complaints, saying that they had discovered Kiri was preparing to launch a major attack with all its main forces and that its coast was currently full of ships heading in their direction. The Hokage said that he was investigating this and would resolve it immediately. He spoke while looking at the evidence the Uzumaki had brought, then said they couldn't help in a possible attack without confirmation. This certainly frustrated those men from Uzushio. The Hokage only said that, seemingly not even caring much, despite his tone trying to show concern. One of the Uzumaki couldn't take it anymore. How can you act this way? We're allies. It's like you don't even care that we're going to be attacked and annihilated, he said. We won't create panic in Konoha over a possible war now that peace has been achieved and with no real proof yet. We'll check the situation, was all the Hokage responded, leaving them quite frustrated. They stayed one more day in the village and then left, heading back to the eastern coast, traveling for 2 days. Until, on the last day, after they had left the Land of Fire and continued across the sea, they were caught by surprise a few kilometers later, falling into a trap. There was a group of ANBU ninjas with masks bearing the symbol of Kiri attacking them. Most were caught off guard and quickly massacred as soon as they stepped into the trap zone, with explosive tags going off above the 10 Uzumaki. The remaining ones tried to fight, surprised that even they hadn't been able to detect it, having let their guard down as they were finally nearing Kiri. It was as if the enemy already knew they would be passing exactly through there. And it didn't take long for the survivors to feel chakras approaching as more than 30 ninjas appeared to fight the remaining 4 Uzumaki. Who are you? The Uzumaki named Hora said, his arm lost, blood dripping into the water after one of the explosions hit him. It doesn't matter. Leave this one and another alive, kill the rest, the ANBU said. They quickly tried to use their jutsus and fuinjutsu to protect themselves, but the numbers were overwhelming. It resulted in the fall of 2 more of them, leaving only the leader and 1 other unconscious, but still alive. "We're done here. Now we must take this information to the leader immediately," the ANBU group leader said. The ANBU group from Kiri gathered all the fallen bodies along with the 2 survivors and withdrew, vanishing and leaving only blood in the water and the remnants of the battle. Meanwhile, the Uzumaki had a system in their village that allowed them to detect which ninjas died in real time. It was a large wall in the center of the village, monitored by members responsible for the protection of Uzushio, and the names of all 8 ninjas who had just been killed quickly began to glow before fading, leaving only the normal ink indicating they had been eliminated and their chakras had vanished from this world. "Master Mu! Master Mu!" An Uzumaki ran to his superior at that moment. As he explained the situation to Mu Uzumaki, who had visited the village as one of the clan's elders, several ninjas ran to the wall with him, seeing that the entire group, except for 2 members, was dead. "Damn it! Identify where they died," they said, and quickly managed to locate the point, a few kilometers from the island. Based on the number of jutsus performed at the location, they were likely ninjas from Kiri. "My lord, this is the report." When they returned, they passed the information to an Uzumaki about what had occurred, with everything indicating it was the Mist Village. The Uzumaki then handed the report to Lord Mu, who read it and sighed. "You may go," he said. Mu Uzumaki was left alone in his meditation room and was not at all happy with the situation. Things were getting worse and worse for the Uzumaki, and now the delegation that went to ask Konoha for help had been captured. If they could guess where the surviving ninjas were, one of them being his pupil, they were probably being used to extract information. "Damn! And I bet Konoha didn't even try to help," he muttered as he walked toward a shelf on one side of the room. He opened it and took out a small chest full of seals. He grabbed it and moved toward the main building, where the leader of the Uzumaki clan was. Masaki Uzumaki, the leader of Uzushio, was a 70-year-old man and the father of Mito Uzumaki, with long white hair and beard, just like Mu. "About what happened?" "Mu, the situation is becoming dangerous," Masaki said, strangely calm. "So that's it? We're going to be destroyed while Konoha turns a blind eye to us?" Mu said in frustration, clenching his fists. "I can't say we're in an easy situation, but I see you brought us an alternative." Masaki looked at the chest under Mu's arms. "Yes," Mu said, placing the chest on the table and opening it, revealing the kunai with the Hiratian seal. "You think the boy could be the solution?" Masaki asked, stroking his beard. "I believe so. We have no one else we can trust. Konoha has already proven it doesn't care about us, and the boy foresaw all of this over a year ago. He's gathering the clans to try to convince Konoha to help us. And you think, no matter how strong the boy is, that will make any difference?" The leader still seemed skeptical. He offered his help. He said with confidence that he could be called. "As much as I don't want him to lose his life in vain, he wants to help us, and I want to use every possible solution, even those that seem unlikely, to save our men, women, and children." Mu said, before continuing. He proposed that we should abandon Uzushio-gakure, go to the Land of Fire, and establish the clan there, according to what my disciple said the first time he met him. "It sounds bad, Lord Masaki, to lose our identity, but isn't that better than the entire clan being massacred?" Mu said. "Very well. If you believe you should call him, then do it," Masaki said, while Mu nodded. At the same time, in Konoha, inside a root base, a group of ANBU ninjas entered carrying several dead Uzumaki bodies, with 2 still alive. They had used mist ninja uniforms precisely to avoid appearing as Konoha, and the ninjas chosen were those with water release, for that very reason. Danzu approached at that moment, looking at the scene with satisfaction. "Good, you brought them. We'll keep the Uzumaki bodies for study. As for the living ones, well, take them to the torture section. I want to know everything they have in mind about the clan. We need to get the scrolls of all Uzumaki knowledge before they fall into the hands of other nations," Danzu said, as his root ANBU nodded, beginning to carry the unconscious Uzumaki to the area where the ninjas would try to extract vital information from Uzushio. Danzu simply watched it all with satisfaction. His plan was unfolding as expected. Now, he just needed to find a way to eliminate a few obstacles. Chapter 265, Konoha under the threat of civil war. Third-person POV. Konoha, year 42. The four elders were sitting in front of one of the most important names in the village. It was Reiji Kurama, leader of the Inuzuka clan, and beside him was Kabura Hyuga, leader of the Hyuga clan, OC. The Hokage was surprised and disappointed at the same time. So the clans are acting alone, attempting an internal coup in the village. Danzu exclaimed angrily. This is worrying, Hiruzen. We can't stand still while a coup d'etat is forming right under our noses. Koharu Udatane, the elder, said with a tone of anger and nervousness. Reiji Kurama searched the village, while meetings had been frequent over the last week. Rumors that troops were beginning to leave the villages quickly spread like wildfire across all the nations, while those unaware were concerned about another war knocking at their door. Reiji Kurama, even after hearing from his daughter that Minato was someone he should trust, couldn't trust in such madness. Stabilizing the village and leading it into another war against the four nations was something he absolutely did not want. He had lost his heir in the last war to Kiri and did not wish for another conflict to take more of the clan's companions. For that reason, he decided to speak with the Hyuga clan, who had not been included in the meetings from the start. Certainly, this clan did not have the affection of Minato Namikaze, from what he could tell, and it was related to the girl everyone knew to be the clan's rebel. No one could touch or control her. When they heard about it, the Hyugas were outraged by the situation, asking to speak with the Hokage immediately, stating that first and foremost, they did not want to be part of all this madness. When the Hokage heard the first part and realized how serious it was, he quickly summoned the elders to talk about the matter. And as soon as they heard about the issue involving Minato Namikaze and many other influential clans in the village, with the exception of the Hyuga, Sarutobi, and Shimura, the latter two for obvious reasons, and everyone also knew of the silent conflict the Hyuga clan had with the boy. After all, he was close to Hanabi Hyuga. I think this is a very delicate matter to try to resolve just like that. How about we discuss this starting tomorrow? After all, we need to see what's really going on. Hiruzen said in the end, maintaining calm over the situation, addressing his words to the two leaders in front of him. All right. We just don't want to start a civil war. That could destroy Konoha with all the nations preparing for an attack. And honestly, I don't care if you handed the Uzumaki clan over for extermination like the boy said, as long as you keep maintaining peace, that's all I ask, and I'll always be loyal to Konoha. The leader of the Kurama clan said. I know. We'll do our best. Now, if you two would excuse us, we need to talk about what happened. Hiruzen said as the two men left the room. This is an affront to the leadership of the village. How could they be scheming behind our backs? And how have we not discovered such a thing yet? Hamura Mitokado raised his voice as the two leaders exited the room, leaving only the elders in private conversation. I said we should have eliminated the boy when we had the chance. Danzu said in a slow but furious tone. He couldn't stand that the village was in such a situation when he had no control over, while several clans were looking to confront the elders, all because of that boy. It's not that simple. Minato was important to the village, he's a great ninja. Hiruzen said with a sigh. So important that now he's scheming against us, Hiruzen. We can't leave things as they are while multiple clans are simply preparing for a civil war, and we're at a disadvantage. Koharu Udatane opposed the Hokage's comment. We must act with caution. It's not just a boy, it's a group of clans acting together. Hiruzen tried to stay calm. Nara, Yamanaka, Akimichi, Hataki, Aburame, Inuzuka, Senju alongside Minato Namikaze, and even the Uchiha clan. This was a dreadful situation to hear about, especially with the threat of war possibly returning to them. All of this because they wanted to protect the allies they had sold out to other nations in exchange for peace. Now they were ready to even fight against the four nations again and start a third war just when peace had finally been achieved. All of it due to the influence of that girl over everyone. The Hokage and the elders hadn't even suspected a thing to begin with, which frustrated them all. He blatantly violated an S-rank mission. Hamura Mitokado pointed out. Yes, but according to Reiji Kurama, Minato said he already knew everything since the Hokage summit, having heard the entire meeting. Hiruzen said. How could he have done that? He never left the camp. My ANBU were instructed to pay attention. Danzu remarked in an even darker tone. I don't know, honestly, the boy is full of unique abilities, maybe in the same way he managed to gather everyone under the Senju clan. He's using the second Hokage's jutsu to create a division within the village, bringing allies together and even using how we've been pushing the Uchiha clan away as an excuse to gain their support as well. The second Hokage would roll in his grave if he knew everything that's happening. Hiruzen said. We should use force, Hiruzen. We should crush them all. Don't you agree, Danzo? Koharu Udatane said, seeking support from the elder who practically always opted for such solutions. Remember who we're facing, Koharu Udatane. They are greater than us. There's Minato, that Tsukumo who, even after retiring with his reputation in the village, still carries great weight, and his abilities are more powerful than most in the village. Not to mention he's training Minato Namikaze. There's also Tsunade. After all, the Senju clan is with them. Including her student, who seems quite active in going against the village, according to the information we've received. Hamura Mitokado spoke in a raised voice to everyone present. Perhaps dealing with all of them at once will be our downfall, but we can handle them one at a time. Danza said in the same slow tone as before, analyzing the entire situation and trying to find a way to put an end to this crisis. So you want to use Minato's team, Hiruzen commented. Yes. After all, they've been together for a long time and no one has suspected anything about Minato, while he might be letting his guard down. Danzu said. But you know we're talking about that boy, Danzu. It's not that simple. Hiruzen replied. Yes, we'll just have to be even more careful when we strike him down. My team can handle it. Danzu insisted. He would finally be eliminating that boy. Despite the circumstances he disliked, it was still his goal. You better be able to do it, Danzu. Because he will turn against the village. Hamura Mitokado said seriously. I don't think that'll happen, but we can use this to label him as the village traitor. Danzu said. But with that space-time jutsu, he could easily escape. Koharu Udatane said. We can't let that boy flee and become a rogue ninja, he has too much power. She voiced what everyone already knew. After all, not even the Hokage was truly sure if he could face the boy head-on. We'll put all our agents to smear his name throughout the village, so everyone loses the respect they had for the hero. After all, his name is too strong and influential, especially with the union of so many clans and his multiple fiancés. Hamura Mitokado said. He might already be quite dissatisfied with the village and go seek refuge with the Uzumakis. These marriages between Uzumaki, Senju, Uchiha, and even Hyuga clans are already a threat in themselves. We haven't found proof, but clearly this is an alliance, and it would be a threat to us in the future anyway. We shouldn't be so surprised, we shouldn't have allowed it in the first place. Koharu Udatane said. Maybe this isn't the way. Hiruzen said suddenly after being silent for some time while the others argued. What are you saying, Hiruzen? This is a real threat to the village. The village that the second Hokage entrusted to you, and we must protect it in the name of our sensei. Danzu growled with a much fiercer tone. You think we can just eliminate him and that's it? Danzu, things are more complicated this time. Whether Minato broke an S-rank mission and is planning to usurp me or something else, we are still dealing with a large, influential part of the village. Hiruzen said. He wasn't a hypocrite about disliking the idea of simply eliminating all enemies of Konoha, but it wasn't that simple. So we're going to wait for them to just steal the village leadership? Don't be naive. If that happens, we'll be back at war and thousands of ninjas will die. Besides, our position in the village will be doomed to fail even if we aren't the direct targets of usurpation. Danzu growled. I always knew something serious was going on. I just hate that I didn't act sooner if I had known about it. Danzu said. Hiruzen didn't respond immediately to Danzu's hostile words. And Shimura continued. Remember, Minato has many clans supporting him, and he also has the Nine Tails. You know that the day they act against us, the entire village could vanish, or even if we survive, we'll still have to face 4 nations, and this time we'll be alone. All because one boy wants to play the hero. If you can't see that, Hiruzen, then you shouldn't even be Hokage. There was hatred in Danzu's voice. Koharu Utatane and Hamura Mitokado were surprised and silent at that statement. Hiruzen didn't seem offended, only thoughtful, conflicted. He still wanted to find a peaceful way to talk. Remember, what they seek is to protect the Uzumaki clan. There's no negotiating with that, Hiruzen. You can't assign our ninjas to protect the Uzumaki clan without the 4 nations declaring war on Konoha. Danzu continued. I think you're right. In the end, Hiruzen said. But I don't believe only your ninjas can handle Minato Namikaze. He said that only a specific group could ambush him. If that's what you think, then send more squads. I'm sure you can do that. Danzu growled in anger. With Hiruzen underestimating his men, he believed he could even handle the Raijin if traps were set to block Minato's jutsu. Fine. We'll do it your way, and I'll send 3 more squads to deal with the boy. Hiruzen said, making his decision. But we still have others to deal with. Koharu Utatane reminded them. Yes. The Jinchuriki must be confined. And we need to eliminate them one by one, each of those planning this attack against the village. Danzu continued. Kushina will not fall into your hands, Danzu. Hiruzen reminded him, with Danzu clearly displeased by that. But she must be confined. He stated after a few seconds. Then we need to silently deal with each of them until they are no longer willing to rise against the village. That's after dealing with the boy. Hamura Mitokado said. We should also kill Tsukumo as property after Minato. He's still dangerous and no longer seems to care about his reputation as a failure. But first, we'll deal with that Uchiha who lives with the boy. She'll be an easy target without a clan or Minato. And the Hyuga girl, the Hyuga clan will thank us for that. But we also have the Senju clan. Danzu said. I'll handle Tsunade when the time comes. Hiruzen said. We must hunt them down individually. We'll send our best. I'm sure we can count on Orochimaru. Danzu said. Yes, let's proceed that way. They all agreed in the end. And thus, they began to deal with the threat to the village's stability. Chapter 266, Making Moves in the Shadows. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. Boom! An explosion happened in the distance with rocks flying everywhere. The toads from afar looked toward that side of Mount Mayaboku, seeming already used to it. Are they going to stay like that all day? I need to sleep. Among the giant toads, there were a few small ones left at the edge of a waterfall. Get used to it, you know it's always like this when they're training. Gamabunta said as he lit his pipe to smoke a little and let the waterfall fall onto his back. Another explosion occurred at that moment, while Gamabunta tried to relax, ignoring Minato's presence there. It would be worse if he had to summon that giant dragon. Gamabunta commented, before suddenly an explosion appeared in the sky. The toad just sighed as the enormous blue dragon began to appear. Minato? Guren said with her mouth half open from above, as the toads looked at a somewhat common scene, since the dragon often appeared here with Minato summoning him to train. In front of Guren's eyes, Minato was talking to him. I want to train your ability. Can we do that? Minato asked as Guren nodded. Other explosions began happening below, while both were flying 1,000 meters above the ground. Guren then moved toward one of the nearby mountains in their line of sight. He placed his 2 small arms forward, beginning to create black clouds, grabbing them and quickly circling the mountain at high speed, making several rings with the clouds around that mountain. When he finished, he pulled away, as the entire area could see the mountain over 1,000 meters tall, surrounded by 3 streams of clouds that the dragon created. Even Kushina, who was training the Yudama Rasengan, stopped to look at the mountain, surprised. She didn't know exactly what Minato planned with the serpent dragon, but it was big. Can you pull it? Minato sat atop Guren's head, looking to the side, curious about the mountain. This was one of the abilities Guren was developing, learning it from the other dragons. As they had discussed, Minato began to discover how dragons lived on large islands floating in the air. Even in dragon territory, they were almost never seen by those who tried to venture there, which was why they were so rare, and the mention of dragons was almost non-existent anywhere in the ninja world. Obviously, Guren's presence, just like the first time at Mount Mayaboku, would shock everyone seeing that kind of summoning. All the toads were afraid of Guren, not only because of his colossal size but also because of the powers he trained with Minato. The rarity of dragons was due to their intelligence and their abilities, because just as Guren was doing, they could levitate large masses of land, making them their homes, while they remained floating in the air far from the reach of other living beings. Flying itself was an extremely rare ability. Guren had started training with small stones, gradually increasing. But he had never reached a mountain before, though the dragons could do even more. So they pushed themselves to lift the mountain from the ground, which required even more strength than its own weight. But he looked serious, beginning to force it, using the very clouds around the mountain with nothing but his will. It began to tremble, cracking in various parts as it was pushed upward. That alone had proven it could levitate that weight, while trying to lift it more and more off the ground. Those who witnessed it around Mount Mayaboku felt a tremor shortly after, as Shima immediately jumped beside her husband, looking shocked as she exited the house, wondering what was happening this time, her eyes fixed on the slightly distant mountain. "Hey, Dad, what is the boy planning?" Shima exclaimed to Fukasaku. "I don't know, Mama. He just seems to do something new every time he summons the dragon." Fukasaku replied, equally surprised. Minato, in the outer parts of central Mount Mayaboku, kept performing rather crazy training every time he came here, from almost summoning the nine-tailed fox to bringing the Jinchuriki for training, even putting that dragon through tests. He could already say that nothing should surprise him anymore. Meanwhile, on the mountain, the ground began to crack from there. On one side, Minato looked surprised and satisfied. "You're doing it, Guren," he cheered. The cracking continued to circle the entire mountain, with the echo of splitting rocks spreading throughout the region. And then, in the next moment, the mountain finally began to detach from the earth, starting to levitate as loose stones fell from beneath it, lifting a cloud of dust on all sides. "Very good." Minato laughed, as the mountain began to rise into the sky. Kushina stood frozen and stunned, watching in surprise, still transformed in her nine-tails chakra cloak. The toads were even more shocked, watching a mountain that had always been part of their home's landscape simply begin to ascend into the sky, wrapped in those clouds, wondering how the dragon was doing that and how it was even possible. The mountain kept rising, while Guren spent about 10 minutes circling it over 1,000 meters above the ground, all the while studying his abilities like the dragon's. Minato was certain that, from this point on, he knew that the dragons of this world were identical to the dragons created through the fruits of the One Piece world, with Guren being a copy of Kaido, but with a friendly temperament. Although, according to Guren, there were at least 30 dragons living in his territory. "Yes," Guren replied. "I finally managed to lift something this big, my teacher will be proud," he celebrated. "Very good. Now, do you think we can lower it carefully and place it in the same spot?" he said at the end, as Guren began to lower the mountain back in place, touching the ground gently. Still, it gave a slight tremor to the earth and raised another cloud of dust due to its weight, even with Guren being careful not to let it fall like a meteor. "We're done here, we'll see each other soon," Minato said goodbye to Guren. After that, Guren also said his farewell and said they would talk again later, before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Minato began to fall from the sky, before using his teleportation jutsu and landing beside Kushina. "That was quite surprising," she murmured, looking at the smoke starting to fade in the sky with Guren disappearing. "You could say that. Well, that's one of his abilities. Anyway, how's the training going?" Minato asked, since he was helping her learn his specialty, the Rasengan and its variations. Obviously, there was no one better who could instruct her. "I've already mastered the giant Rasengan, but I'm trying to create several at once with the chakra cloak arms," but it's a bit tricky, she said with a sigh, before looking at him, determined. But obviously, I'm going to learn it, Minato. Databane, she exclaimed, fired up. Minato smiled, making her look at him seriously. Minato, why are you so distracted today? Kushina suddenly asked, as he raised an eyebrow. You think so, he said, a bit embarrassed. Of course I do. I know you. You're always training all the time, but with those eyes, you're distracted, she murmured. He sighed. After all, he had just returned to the village and immediately took Kushina alone to Mount Mayaboku, since he wanted to check something with her using the Kyuubi cloak, and he couldn't draw attention by making all the girls disappear from the village, so he took only her. He looked seriously at Kushina this time. Since I entered the village, Kushina, something's wrong. The atmosphere in the village has changed, and I believe Hiruzen already knows about our plan. There's a lot of surveillance on all of us, he's working to prevent the clan's conspiracy. Minato said, raising a worried look from Kushina the next moment. Someone betrayed us, she already guessed angrily, while Minato seemed quite calm about it. It was a risk. It was very likely to happen, but either way, I still want to continue. Now that the time to act is approaching, when the moment comes, we'll have to be ready, he said. Will you be okay? You said your whole team is made to spy on you, what if they try something? Kushina murmured, worried. It's very likely they'll do even more. But don't worry about me. I'm more worried about you and the rest of the girls, he said before continuing. You know that now, controlling the Kyuubi's chakra. It gives you the ability to sense people's hatred. If you feel any danger near you, don't hesitate to use that power, understood? I'm confident you can handle anyone in the village with the chakra cloak and Kurama's help. What worries me are the others, he warned. I will protect all of them, Kushina said. But Minato shook his head. You still can't leave your house. You have to keep up appearances. I'll take care of it. It's time to change Makoto's eyes, he said. In the end, they stayed a bit longer, while Minato tried to focus on teaching Kushina without thinking too much about the village's problems. They returned to Kushina's house, dispelling the two clones that had stayed there to trick the ANBU in the next moment. Minato picked up a scroll and began to write, avoiding even creating a sound barrier like Kushina always did, since the even more alert eyes and ears of the ANBU could notice something wrong. So he wrote down his final impressions on the paper, while she watched him and nodded, without saying a word. Then, he burned the paper and began to leave, heading toward another house of the Senju clan, while inviting Tsunade to his apartment. She nodded, and they went there using the teleportation jutsu. They found Makoto preparing coffee. You've arrived, Makoto commented, taking a cake out of the oven, while Minato just made a gesture to silence her. She merely nodded. He picked up a scroll again and started giving information. Makoto looked surprised by it, but nodded. Her eyes were getting worse, as Minato had asked her to train, her movements were becoming even dangerous, so the time had come, she needed to transplant new Manjikyu to achieve her eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. With that, Makoto would become the most powerful among the girls while Kushina didn't yet have her full transformation, that is, if Makoto was still stronger. In any case, Minato wrote that they would have some time using the right gene. They just left the cake stored to avoid raising suspicions, and once they were ready, knowing there were many ANBU ninja around, Minato teleported the two to his nearly finished house. We have only a few minutes before the ANBU get here. Let's make clones and give them enough chakra to last days and fool the sensory ninja, he instructed. They nodded and quickly made the clones to pretend to be them inspecting the house, and the three originals vanished the next moment. Minato, Makoto, and Suna went to Tsunade's secret lab, where she had worked on implementing Nawaki's arm. Though she hadn't participated in the surgery due to her fear of blood, her daughter had done it. All the necessary equipment was already there, and it would be easy to perform the transplantation. Lie down on the table, I want to do a checkup on your condition before we begin, Suna requested as Makoto lay down. Minato stayed off to the side, waiting for the first part to finish so he could retrieve the eyes he had kept safe. You knew about this, didn't you? Suna asked Makoto, while Minato looked up, not knowing what they were talking about, as Makoto pressed her lips together without knowing how to answer. "Damn it, what else could I expect with you two sleeping together?" Suna said with a voice full of anger. "What are you talking about?" Minato raised an eyebrow at her. "You didn't even notice?" "She's pregnant," Suna said, looking at him, while Minato seemed to have the ground pulled from under his feet by something so shocking. "What?" was all he managed to let out. Chapter 267, Let's Get Married. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. Makoto's transplant lasted the entire night, while her eyes were removed, losing all their brightness as they were taken out of her chakra flow, as if she had lost her vision and completely died. They would be useless now, while the new eyes, after Minato removed them from the scroll filled with protective seals, which took some time before he could finally retrieve them, were handed to Tsuna to implant into Makoto. When morning came, she had finished, cleaning her hands and looking at Makoto, who was lying there. There were layers of dried blood on her clothes and hers, while her eyes were bandaged, blocking her sight, since all the wounds caused during the transplant needed to heal and scar over, but most importantly, her body needed to get used to a new pair of eyes before she could finally open them. Suna's gaze turned to Minato. He had stayed awake all night too, watching Tsuna work on the transplant. He approached at that moment, while Tsuna stepped aside to let him pass and check on Makoto. She was conscious, but silent. Makoto knew he was there, she just didn't say anything, while her lips seemed to tremble slightly. Minato didn't say a word and then, he took her right hand with his left, and with his right hand, he touched her belly under her blouse to feel her skin. He hadn't imagined this. That's why her pregnancy took him by surprise. And, when he finally began to feel the life growing in Makoto's belly at that moment, he could tell that the pregnancy was already 2 months alone. Life had already formed and was developing. Minato would never have guessed without seeing any visible change in Makoto's belly, which hadn't happened yet. His observation haki wasn't developed enough to sense something different there without focusing, and the last thing he had done in the past 12 months was check Makoto's belly. Makoto's right hand gripped Minato's tightly. He looked at her, still blindfolded. "Why didn't you tell me?" Minato asked. "You should have told me." He hadn't even suspected, and Makoto hadn't acted strangely. "I didn't want you to worry," she said in a neutral tone. "Well, I would have worried, but I also would have liked to know that I was going to be a father 2 months ago," Minato said, while hearing Tsuna step away from them, clicking her tongue, washing her hands and cleaning the instruments at the sink in that laboratory. "She's jealous," Makoto commented, cracking a small smile, while Minato sighed. "This isn't the time for that, Makoto," Minato said seriously. "I'm sorry for that, Minato. But you know if I had said I was pregnant, you wouldn't have even planned to give me these new eyes," she said. "That's not true," Minato replied. After all, he preferred to have the mother of his child able to summon a complete Susanoo than to have her vulnerable. Even if it could strain the baby, he was in a possible war against the village. So it was better for Makoto to have her own power to protect herself along with the child inside her. "But will you let me fight?" she still asked. "I'd rather not," Minato answered honestly. "That's not an option now, Minato," she said. "I know," Minato said in the end, with a sigh, before looking at Tsuna, who had her back to them, still seeming angry. "Go talk to her." "I'm fine now," Makoto said, with Minato nodding and kissing her forehead. Tsuna was angry, so Minato approached her. She looked at him for a moment before turning her face away and continuing to take off her bloodied coat and put on her other clothes, tying her hair up before throwing everything, gloves and clothes, into a trash bag nearby. She had gotten angry when she found out, obviously, but had set it aside to focus on Makoto's eye transplant. After all, it depended on her. But now that the surgery was over, she couldn't help but feel frustrated. "I knew it would turn out badly, you and that Uchiha living together," she muttered. "Why are you so angry?" Minato sighed. The girl was jealous. "Makoto is my wife, just like you," he said as he approached her from behind and hugged her, holding her gently, while the girl stiffened without answering him. "You're jealous, is that it?" Minato asked. Suna still didn't respond, but her body finally seemed to soften in the situation. I shouldn't be. I know that, she murmured in the end, embarrassed. It's just that, knowing Makoto will be a mother. I don't know how to explain it. I wanted that too, she admitted. Minato raised an eyebrow behind her, still holding her against his body. Are you on those days? He asked, while she nodded slightly, a little embarrassed. Now her hormones were pretty chaotic, added to the delicate situation. So, it could be said that the shock of knowing Makoto and Minato would have a child left her a little shaken. You want that? Do you want us to have a child? Minato didn't hold back the question, while she looked at him seriously. They had never slept together, so she was still a virgin. How can you ask something like that? She murmured, her face slightly flushed. If that's bothering you. Minato smiled. Then let's get married after we confront the village leadership. No matter what happens, how about it? He asked. She opened her eyes. He had never talked about the wedding they would have, never set a date. Just that they would do it in the future and, with so many problems, no one really cared about it. Are you sure, Minato? We're in the middle of a war anyway, she murmured. I know, but still. I'll be at war married to 4 women. I can't let Makoto have a child and it not carry my name. My child will not be a bastard, and he will be a Namikaze, Minato said, while Tsuna in front of him nodded before breaking into a smile, letting her happiness show at the fact that they would finally get married. Really? She had changed from water to wine quickly upon hearing that. It was her dream, and her already stirred-up hormones quickly intensified it. Minato didn't even have time to react before Tsuna kissed him, then pulled away. Anyway, we'll deal with that later. Now let's get ready to return to the village and replace our clones. Makoto needs care now. You can keep her at your house, no one will be able to get in there, and your mother will keep any suspicions away, right? Minato said, while Tsuna nodded. They got ready and finally departed. Minato and Makoto replaced their clones at the apartment, while Tsuna was sent to the clone that was at her house in the Senju clan. Minato checked on Makoto, who was already starting to recover, although she still needed to remain in bed. He teleported her to the Senju household with him immediately afterward, finding Tsuna already waiting for them. Makoto went to Tsuna's room, where the blonde would take care of the Uchiha. Minato spoke with Tsunade after leaving Tsuna and Makoto in the room, explaining the situation, while Tsuna's mother couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at him. So you're telling me that now the Uchiha has the same eyes as Madara Uchiha? The one Grandpa used to struggle fighting, she said, not hiding her skepticism or even her concern, thinking it was a terrible idea to give that much power to an Uchiha. Kushina has part of the Nine Tails power. Soon, she'll have all of it. Your daughter has mastered Sage Mode. Hanabi can already perform S-rank jutsus. Their power levels have all risen considerably, even surpassing you, Tsunade. One being stronger than the other won't make any difference. Kushina and Makoto will have equivalent levels of raw power, Minato said, while Tsunade gave her son-in-law a strange look. This boy was behind the 4 most powerful women in the Leaf Village, all from powerful bloodlines and with distinct abilities, and he himself would be married to all of them at once and build a family that was unusual in the village, especially with so many women from such strong clans. Even with one of them being her daughter, Tsunade couldn't help but think how absurd this was. Minato had too much power in his hands, not to mention he was already strong on his own, having made a name for himself in recent years. Tsunade, Makoto, Kushina, and Hanabi, despite the village recognizing their strength, had all had their power increased exponentially without the village suspecting a thing. They couldn't even imagine the true power each of them now possessed, which is why all the focus was on Minato. And they would come to regret the day they attacked this family. After all, who could survive a fight against 5 such powerful individuals? It made her wonder how Minato had been behind the rise in strength of each one. But if she were to ask that kind of question directly, Minato would deny that he was truly behind everything. Of course, he had helped in many ways, but Tsunade herself had seen her daughter Tsuna learn Sannin mode on her own, and the other girls had developed their strength independently, even though Minato had helped Kushina and Makoto overcome their power limits and reach another level. I wonder what kind of monsters will come from my daughter and the other three who will marry him. Tsunade couldn't help but have that thought as she looked at Minato. Minato looked at her. Anyway, I'm still the strongest, so don't worry, he said, flashing a smile at his mother-in-law. While Tsunade raised an eyebrow at him, thinking how full of himself this brat was. Anyway, be careful, Tsunade said with a more serious tone. I know, Minato said in a serious tone. I'm sure the village is going to set something up against me. But I'll be fine. Right now, I just want you to make sure no one gets near Makoto while she recovers. It'll take about 2 weeks for her body to fully adapt to the new eyes. I'll take care of it. My concern now is the explosion that girl might cause if someone tries to attack her. I don't want to see a bijou inside the village, Tsunade commented. She was talking about Kushina, already knowing for some time that Minato had helped her control the chakra of the Nine Tails without anyone in the village suspecting. She doesn't have that kind of control yet, and Kushina is already handling her power very well. She isn't controlled by the chakra full of hatred. So you don't need to worry about her, Minato said, and Tsunade simply nodded in the end. Anyway, I'll see you at the meeting, Minato said, and he disappeared while Tsunade went to check on Suna and Makoto. Nawaki was doing something outside, not bothering to hide the fact that he now had a new arm from the village. When night fell, Minato gathered everyone except for one person at the secret location. Are you saying the leader of the Kurama clan betrayed us? One of the members immediately became enraged upon hearing this from Minato, who had gathered everyone to say that they were reaching their limit and would soon have to act. He also informed them that the member of the Kurama clan had spoken with the Hokage. After all, Minato had scanned the entire village that very day, checking each of the people he had gathered there, evaluating their emotions, and the only one truly disturbed was the father of Mirage, his ANBU teammate. The ninjas could very well mask their expressions, and this clan leader certainly could too, but Minato knew the emotions of each one, and the change in him compared to what Minato previously knew was far too great. There were feelings of caution, fear, and nervousness in him. That's what gave him away. That's why Minato didn't bother bringing him into this meeting. It doesn't matter now. We have no choice but to proceed. The nations must already be dispatching their armies, so we act now, Minato said in a firm tone. They discussed how they would go about this and how the Hokage would do everything to persuade and even threaten them. Everyone was to remain alert. Minato returned home after 2 hours of meeting, ignoring all the eyes on him, not even noticing that he was in several different places, switching with his clones. He was about to fall asleep when he felt something. He immediately looked toward where the Horatian signal was indicating a call. This is the Uzumaki clan, he murmured, vanishing at that moment, finally heading to the call of the kunai Minato had given to Mu Uzumaki after the end of the Second Great War. Chapter 268. The Uzumaki clan. Third-person POV. Konoha, year 42. Minato appeared the next moment in a room full of candles, leaving a clone in the village. The first thing he noticed was the oldest Uzumaki he knew well and 2 other younger Uzumaki looking at him cautiously. One of them had met Minato during the first meeting they had with a clan member. The oldest had the kunai Minato had given him when they met at the Senju clan. An Uzumaki. Minato commented as he stared at them for a few seconds. You really came. Mu said. There was a chance Minato wouldn't have responded to his call as he said, or even that the kunai wouldn't work there, so far from Konoha. Yes. I'm surprised you only called me now. I know the villages are already preparing to attack soon. Minato said. Things are getting a little complicated and we're no longer sending anyone to Konoha after the incident a week ago. He said. What happened? Minato asked, not recalling hearing anything. You don't know? We lost an entire group of Uzumakis. He said. Everything indicates they were Kiri ninjas as soon as they left the Fire Country's territory. Mu explained. No. Minato murmured with a narrowed look. I haven't heard anything about that in the village. We sent letters about it, but got no response, and we can't even leave the village now," he said. "So the Hokage is limiting information and covering things up. We're not hearing anything about you anymore, and even information about other nations' activity is being silenced by the village," Minato explained before giving a very serious look. "Looks like Konoha has completely abandoned you. I wouldn't doubt it if it was Danzo's group who killed your own ninjas and made Konoha ninjas look like Kiri ninjas. He must already have some important information." He directly stated the situation the Uzumakis were now in. I didn't want to believe this possibility. "Are you sure Konoha could do that?" Mu asked, raising his voice upon hearing it, letting his anger take over his words, outraged that Konoha could be behind the disappearance of their own messengers. Could they be so cruel, to go this far? "I can't confirm anything yet, and I intend to investigate this when I return to Konoha, but knowing Danzo's methods, he really is capable of that," Minato said. "How could Konoha really deal with us this way? We've been allies for so long, and now that there's no Senju in power, we'll be slaughtered like cattle, just to maintain peace." "When you said this in Konoha, I didn't believe it, I admit, and I still can't believe we're going to be destroyed." The elder seemed on the verge of tears saying those words. "Master Mu," a member of the group said. Minato could understand their situation. "But not all is lost. We still have a few weeks," Minato said as the elder looked at him. "You really believe that? Konoha isn't prepared to face 4 nations in a location outside its borders," one of them commented. "No, it's not," Minato admitted. It would be shooting themselves in the foot, as he had said to a member there. "But we can bring all the Uzumakis inside the Fire Country. You must settle in Konoha and we can face the 4 nations again, like in the Second War," Minato said, confident that now he had much more powerful allies and his strength had increased even more since the end of the Second War. They could deal with all the nations at once, in a way that would make everyone immediately think twice before starting a Second World War. Danzo had always dreamed of Konoha controlling the world. Minato would practically make it someone the villages would watch carefully before starting any conflict, especially after seeing what he, Kushina, and Makoto were capable of. But they would only do all that after killing Danzo once and for all. After all, Minato had already decided that even if he had to leave the village as a rogue ninja if Plan A didn't work, he would have to eliminate Danzo no matter what. He had only kept him alive because he needed to expose him to the entire village with his crimes, something he hadn't yet shared with the clan leaders, precisely to see who would betray them. "Living in the land of fire, my apprentice said you mentioned that." Mu chuckled at that, seeming to lift some of his sorrow. "But yes, it does sound like a good idea in the end," he admitted. "Then that will be the plan. After all, Uzushigakure is just a piece of land, just like Konoha. What makes a place are the people who make it up, and I'm inviting you to join Konoha. I may officially only be a war hero and an elite jonin in the village, but one day I'll lead the whole village and I will guarantee a place for all of you there," Minato said. Mu looked at him for a moment and gave a tight smile with tears falling from his eyes, even surprising Minato. He hadn't expected something so sudden, but perhaps this elder was desperate, hoping for a solution to his problem. To hear a young man say they could be saved was, at the very least, a huge relief regarding the entire Uzumaki clan. "Come with me, Minato Namikaze. It's time to meet the clan leader." Mu stood up at that moment, wiping his tears as he asked Minato to follow him out of that room with his 2 students. Minato had to put on a cloak and a mask. Even though it was late at night in an isolated clan, it was still good to hide his identity when everyone here had red or white hair from age. After all, a blonde would draw attention from anyone in Uzushigakure the same way Kushina had drawn attention with her red hair in the academy. They proceeded. There were at least 20,000 people living in Uzushigakure. He scanned the entire area quickly with Haki and his sensory chakra. Although the village didn't occupy anywhere near the whole landmass of the island, it was still a good number of people, with all the men and most of the women able to manipulate chakra to varying degrees. This was not an ordinary village with a large civilian population. The Uzumaki clan taught all its members, due to their naturally large chakra reserves, how to manipulate and control chakra. It was no wonder they were all feared. Minato looked at the empty streets. The clan would retire early, staying with their families. There were no large businesses functioning as entertainment, it was a more conservative lifestyle. Still, there were neighbors talking to each other as they walked through the area. Men and women with red hair, children playing with one another while their parents insisted it was time for bed because it was too late, guards everywhere due to the clan situation. And Minato could feel several powerful Uzumaki scattered across the island, always alert to any activity coming from the sea. Many looked at Minato while greeting Mu Uzumaki, a highly respected elder among the Uzumakis. He was a masked man walking with them. Naturally, they looked at him with some suspicion, but no one said anything and they continued through the streets. This is where Kushina Uzumaki's mother lives. She was born here. Mu stopped in front of a modest house, pointing to it, while Minato could feel the woman inside, sleeping. Since the future marriage between Minato and Kushina wasn't a secret, Mu made a point of mentioning that to Minato. They then proceeded to the next building in the center of the village, where the clan leader resided. Minato saw that Mu's house was large, but the leader's home resembled the Hokage's building in Konoha. They entered the grounds through the gate, where some Uzumaki ninjas were already waiting for them. "I'm here to see the leader," Mu informed. "Yes, he already gave us orders to let you through. He is expecting you." The Uzumakis granted permission as they entered the place. Inside the building, Mu dismissed his students and asked Minato to follow him. Only the two of them entered. A man with white hair and a long beard was seated, dressed in all white elder robes filled with Fuinjutsu symbols. "Hello, boy. I've heard much about you, Minato Namikaze. My name is Masaki Uzumaki and I am the leader of the clan and head of Uzushi-Ogakure." The man looked at Minato, who removed his mask and pulled back his hood as he approached. The man analyzed him the entire time, while Mu sat in front of the leader and Minato did the same. Without waiting for Minato to speak, the leader picked up a bottle from the small table separating them and began pouring small cups, offering tea. "Hello, Masaki Uzumaki. It's a pleasure to meet you for the first time," Minato said. "Yes, please, accept the tea. We have little time to talk, after all we want to make sure you get some sleep tonight, but we still need to discuss important matters. Mu spoke of your genuine interest in helping us during this crisis," the leader said. "Yes," Minato replied, drinking as they began a short conversation that ended up lasting 2 hours. Minato was sincere in his request and in how he believed they could save the Uzumaki clan after everything. The elder Uzumakis listened to the boy's suggestion and, like Mu before, Masaki Uzumaki seemed inclined to accept moving the clan to the land of fire to protect them, believing that perhaps the world was no longer safe for them to remain independent. "I'll be the one who destroys the Uzumaki clan's independence by joining our people to a village. Our ancestors who fought for this their entire lives must be spitting on me from the afterlife right now." Masaki Uzumaki laughed with a timid smile. "It's better than all of us being wiped out, Lord Masaki," Mu commented. "I suppose you're right. In any case, there's something we haven't heard yet about you, Minato Namikaze." He looked to his companion before turning his attention back to Minato. "I want to know what you plan to do when your plan doesn't work. Because that might very well happen, according to your own words," Masaki Uzumaki said, now with a serious tone. "Then I'll leave the village. I already told Mu this when we met in Konoha. I intend to come here anyway just like I did today," Minato said. "I heard about that, but I ask that you don't do it." Masaki spoke with the same tone as before, as Minato raised an eyebrow. "You've already proven yourself to be very brave, and clearly you'll be a great leader for Konoha one day. There's no doubt the village will prosper under your leadership, but unfortunately, we are fated to die here. At least we'll do it fighting harder than any other moment in our history and showing the world why the Uzumaki clan requires 4 nations to attack Uzushi-Ogakure at once," Masaki said. "Bringing you here and making you a rogue ninja just to help us, we can't accept such a thing, even if you would be a great help. I won't accept you throwing your life away when it can still be preserved in Konoha, so I ask that you don't act against Konoha by running from it." He finished. While Minato wasn't offended by their lack of trust in him, with 4 nations, they had no idea what he was truly capable of. "You don't need to worry about that, I'm doing just fine. I'm strong enough to help you and I have very powerful companions. Even if you say you don't need it, we'll be here. I even have a plan that could remove the island from this place, but we'll leave that for the future, just don't leave the kunai with the seal trapped behind a barrier I can't use," Minato simply said, leaving the 2 men speechless. "Anyway, I'm going. For better or worse, we'll be here to help you, and we'll see each other soon. Goodbye," Minato said as he switched places with his clone so quickly that neither of the 2 elders even noticed the change. The clone vanished in a puff of smoke, making it seem like they'd been speaking with a clone the entire time. Minato didn't even wait for them to respond to his words, because it was no use arguing, he was going to the Uzumaki clan no matter what. He had his women, and together, they could fight all the nations at once, not to mention the plans Minato had yet to share with anyone. When the time came, he would act. Whether it was in Konoha, in Uzushiogakure, or against the attack of the 4 nations at the same time. Chapter 269 Mission in the Land of Wind. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. The next morning in Konoha, the same strange atmosphere seemed to hang in the village air as Minato sighed, making his breakfast alone, since Makoto wasn't there. "It's so strange to have breakfast without her here," he murmured, not holding it back, since Makoto being around in the mornings had become a common sight he was used to. And as he sipped his coffee, he noticed someone approaching and heard a knock at the door. He knew it was an Umbu squad member sent directly from the Hokage. He opened the door. "Minato Namikaze, the Hokage demands your presence in the office within the next 10 minutes, the ninja stated, ending the sentence and vanishing. Minato simply closed the door with a sigh. "Okay. They're not going to give me a break," he grumbled in his mind. It was past time to face those old men head-on. As soon as he finished his coffee, he went straight to the Hokage building, entering the office immediately. The Hokage was seated in his chair, with no ninja guarding him on the ceiling at that moment, though all the Umbu were on the roof, seemingly waiting for any sign of a possible fight. If it happened. Still, the Hokage was not entirely alone. There was a man near the window with a cane, looking out over the village while ignoring Minato entering through the door. It was Danzu, who seemed to be there to confront Minato, perhaps one last time. At least that was what he hoped. These guys aren't even trying to hide it. Minato sighed calmly, not denying what was happening there. The question was, what was the Hokage's plan? Trying to capture a ninja with a space-time ninjutsu who can simply teleport anywhere he has placed his seal? The old man has many flaws and is weak in some decisions, but he is certainly the most merciful of the elders. And for him to come to the point of wanting to eliminate Minato meant he saw no other option left. Not that Minato cared about that, the old man had his good sides, but the negative ones outweighed them. After the Second War, he started making mistake after mistake, weakening the village. Minato stepped up in front of the Hokage, stopping there. Facing him calmly, showing nothing but a gaze as if nothing at all was happening. "You're here, boy," the Hokage remarked. "Yes, Hokage-sama. About your urgent request. What's the situation?" Minato asked calmly, as he saw Danzu looking at him for the first time. He could feel the malice and anger directed at him, but Danzu said nothing, letting the Hokage lead. The Hokage, keeping a calm tone and neutral expression, continued. "We're having trouble again in the southwest. Citizens from some villages were found dead and we haven't been able to find any trace of the enemy who did it. Whoever is behind this moves very well. We sent several teams, but no one managed to identify anything." He paused briefly before continuing. "However, the only person who managed to find any trace was you. That's why we want you to leave with your team. We're sending more reinforcements and preparing the entry this time through the Land of Wind, since we received a response from the Kazekage authorizing our teams to join the teams from the Sand Village to follow the trail," he informed, and Minato showed no sign of surprise. I see. So it's not just Leaf Village ninjas involved in this, but even Suna's ninjas, possibly even including the Kazekage himself, which could increase the chances of them trying to take me down. He thought immediately. Things are getting interesting, Minato couldn't help but mentally commend. But it probably wasn't hard to negotiate this with Suna, since the Sand Village likely harbored a lot of resentment toward him, after he invaded their village and shifted the war in Konoha's favor midway through, thanks to his invasion and rescue of the antidote. Not to mention he escaped unscathed after fighting against Chikako, the Kazekage, and other elite Suna ninjas. Sunagakure probably didn't think twice when they received Konoha's request to set up the ambush. Minato could assume they'd try to eliminate him with powerful forces. It would be pretty bad to see the village lose strength at this moment. Besides, Minato couldn't even question the mission. He had already been involved with this case some time ago, unable to find the entry point in Suna back then, but this time he had authorization. Though, ironically, they were confirming they hadn't discovered anything, while at the same time trying to destroy his reputation when not even the village itself managed to solve the case. How much time do I have? Minato asked. I'd like you to depart in a few hours, early in the afternoon. All the teams will already be ready. You have a few hours to prepare, the Hokage said. Minato nodded. Alright, I'll do that, Hokage-sama, he said, taking his leave, beginning to walk away after the Hokage dismissed him. Minato headed out while the Hokage and Danzo remained silent, seeming cautious of his supposed ability to hear even through barriers, as had happened during the Kage summit, according to what Minato had reported to the clan leaders. They seemed to wait until he was far enough away to feel safe, both merely observing until he was out of sight, though still keeping a watchful eye. What do you think? The Hokage spoke for the first time, smoking in his chair. He accepted a very easy mission. But I don't doubt he's beginning to suspect we're sending him to be eliminated, Danzo said with a narrowed look. He believed Minato couldn't hear them from that far. I hope so, Danzo. I hope the trap works. We only have one chance. Worse yet, with those jutsus of his, he can go anywhere, and we have no idea how many seals he has scattered around, the Hokage said seriously. We'll either eliminate him, or destroy his reputation and brand him a rogue traitor. If he still manages to escape, there's no way that boy survives in the world. He has enemies in every nation. I doubt he'll last long, even with his teleportation jutsu, Danzo said with a stern look. So it's true. The Uchiha girl is living with the Senju? The Hokage asked, and Danzo nodded. Yes. She didn't sleep at Minato's apartment last night. It seems he's already noticed our possible move. That's why we need to be even more alert. It's an all-or-nothing game. Danzo said. Maybe this isn't the way. The Hokage seemed to regret, while Danzo looked at him. Are you serious, Hiruzen? Danzo immediately growled at his friend. You've got to be kidding me. We've come this far, we're not going to let that boy live. We'll stop his civil war. That could destroy Konoha, and you know it, he said. I know. But we're going to lose either way. I'm afraid that, in the end, all four nations will turn against us. And did you get information to obtain the Uzumaki technique? The Hokage asked. Yes, we did. A few days ago, we got the necessary intel on how to enter Uzushigakure. We'll begin the operation a little before the international responses. But first, we need to see the result of this mission to eliminate the threat, Danzo said, and the Hokage simply nodded. Meanwhile, Minato walked through the village that morning, sighing as his gaze wandered again to the places around him, lost in his own thoughts. He was heading toward the Senju clan, but given the caution he had seen from the two elders, he kept walking away to listen in a little on their conversation, as they felt more comfortable and secure. Minato could still perfectly hear everything they were saying inside that room. He kept walking, letting his body move forward on its own as his mind shut down. He closed his eyes, focusing on the village, while his hockey field quickly began to sweep through everything. He headed to a corner of the village, while his consciousness began to explore that location. Entering underground, there he found the secret root base, which he had been monitoring over the past year. though he had taken his eyes off it in recent days. Now, he was scanning all areas, able to see young ninjas being trained cruelly and harshly, other adult ninjas also fighting and simulating approaches and strategic formations. There were experiment rooms, where Minato could see Orochimaru himself working on a few things. Even Nawaki's arm was there. In the other room, he could also see open corpses being studied. Red hair, they were Uzumaki's. The whole group was there, being studied. They were all already dead. Danzu, you could have stayed hidden all this time. But I swear you'll die much sooner than you expect. I won't even bother trying to incriminate you first. I'll kill you first and then show the evidence against you. Whether the village wants to accept it or not doesn't matter. What matters is eliminating you for good. Because if I wait to kill you after trying to incriminate you, the Hokage will do everything to save you, Minato thought calmly, already decided. The next time he returned to the village, he would start with Danzu's death. Minato made his way to a well-kept orphanage, finding an elderly woman with white strands in her hair standing in the yard with the children. Minato decided to stop by once more to see Madame Guerite and the children, his old orphanage. He didn't know how things would unfold afterward, but he wanted to leave behind a good memory for these people. As he began to approach the gate, the woman finally noticed him. He smiled at her, and she returned the smile, walking toward him. It had been over a month since they last saw each other, so the woman immediately scolded him for it, hugging him. Minato stayed for an hour with her, talking and even answering a few questions from the children after they found out he was there. Then, he continued through the village and found Inoichi Yamanaka, Shikaku Nara, and Chuza Akimichi eating at a barbecue restaurant. All of them quickly greeted him upon seeing him. Minato spent about half an hour with them, chatting. After that, he walked a bit further through the village and reached the Might family's house. Might Guy was growing strong and training hard. He had good equipment now, although he still trained in an extremely intense way. His father was always by his side. Minato talked with them for a bit and greeted Guy's mother, who was still alive, after having been saved many years ago. Minato went to what would become the Namikaze clan's home, which was almost finished. He sighed, looking at the roof and the completed structure. Only the outer parts still needed work. He gave a sorrowful sigh to that place that he might never even get to use. The Namikaze clan might have to wait. He returned to the center of the village, passing by the Hataki compound and chatting with his swordmaster. He found him sitting down. He didn't say he was going on a mission, just kept the conversation light, although Tsukumo seemed to sense it. When Minato eventually said he'd be heading out on a mission, Tsukumo looked at him with an understanding only the two of them could share as men. Tsukumo had confidence that Minato would make it through whatever the village tried to throw at him, and with that, he too needed to prepare for what would come next. Minato met Hanabi from the Hyuga clan, spoke with her, and even gave her a farewell kiss. The girl, who was extremely shy, was kissed so directly that even other Hyuga members at the gate looked over in surprise. The girl ran back inside her house. Minato laughed and then headed toward the Senju compound, where he would have a final conversation with Nawaki, Tsunade, and none other than Kushina, Suna, and Makoto, who were there as well. He would soon leave the village for his mission. He just wanted to see his companions one last time. Chapter 270, Konoha surrounded by manipulations. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. Minato, with his team, quickly advanced through the forests of the Land of Fire, heading southwest. The group was not only composed of his own team, but two other teams were accompanying them, all made up of Konoha shinobi, used directly by the Hokage, as Minato could tell by the absence of Danzu's tongue seals. Minato was certain that other teams had gone ahead as well, ones directly belonging to Root, since he had noticed some movements in the village since yesterday, heading out and moving in the direction of this location as far as his haki could sense. After a few hours of travel, they finally reached the target village, where groups of shinobi were waiting for them. As he had predicted, there were two ambush teams from Root already at the site. Minato approached the leaders. He handed over the Hokage's scroll and asked about the situation. After a brief conversation, he learned he wouldn't be leading the mission, as that responsibility had been assigned to another, but he was granted authorization to lead the investigation of the teams in the village. Thus they approached the location. Upon arriving at the village, everything looked identical to the first village Minato had visited some time ago. But this time, with some care, it was clear that there hadn't been just one person doing all the work. It was evident that an entire group had attacked the village. Not only that, but there were also much more visible signs indicating the path the enemy had taken, which could even be easily identified by other teams with a good eye. A member of the Hyuga clan would have been able to detect it. But it was obvious that village had been used to set a trap for him. Which was a horrible thing. They sacrificed an entire village to lure him here. Even Minato couldn't believe that Konoha would go as far as to do this kind of thing. The village's darkness was being shown in its worst form, and this was Danzu's modus operandi. Some bodies were left on the ground, marked by needles and even cuts made by puppets, but Minato quickly followed the small trail that had been left behind. Without needing much investigation, he informed the teams. Quickly, everyone prepared to move out. Minato lost command at that moment, as another leader, one from Root, took over the advance through the forest following the trail. They wanted to choose the desert as the battlefield for their ambush, no trees where Minato could better hide using his kunai with seals. A more open field posed more of a disadvantage for him. Minato didn't stop looking at the 5 ambush teams surrounding him. Even with masks hiding their eyes and expressions, he could feel the malice from all the Root shinobi directed at him. The other Konoha shinobi seemed a bit less malicious, but even so, they appeared to know that their secret mission was to take him down. He could feel the caution and even the indifference among them, directed straight at Minato. Minato knew some of them and could feel the regret and fear in the air. There was nothing to be done, they were following the mission. So, he simply continued with the mission as they finally reached the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Wind. The trail indicated that the enemy had entered exactly through the position where they stood. A meeting was held while a scout ninja went into the Land of Wind in search of Suna's team. He returned later, informing them that a group of 5 other teams would be waiting on the other side. Great! Now let's move out, the leader said, as they began to advance, crossing the border, through another stretch of forest, until they finally came upon the desert, with the vegetation completely vanishing. There, 5 more groups awaited, all directly from Suna, that meant 60 shinobi. The 5 Konoha teams paused to hand over the mission scroll. Suna's leader didn't seem very comfortable. Alright, let's proceed, the Suna ninja said, and the teams quickly advanced into the desert. There were 10 teams and 120 shinobi. 119 against 1. Minato was flattered as they followed that essentially artificial trail made to lead them to the place where he would be ambushed and attacked. How ironic, he thought, vanishing with the group of shinobi. In Konoha, Suna paced heavily in her room, while Makoto lay on her cot, currently resting within the Senju clan. How long are you going to keep doing that? The girl said, slightly irritated, while her eyes were blindfolded, healing from her wounds. How can I just stand still? The village set a trap to kill Minato, Suna grumbled. Even so, Minato went, and he didn't show any fear when he came here to talk about it. Trust him, Makoto said, still lying down and looking toward the ceiling, if she could even see it, but that position felt comfortable to her. I know, but I'm worried, the blonde girl murmured, letting her shoulders drop. There's not much we can do, Suna. Minato is strong. There's no one in the village who can defeat him. Not even 1,000 shinobi could hold him. You should know that better than anyone. Makoto insisted. I know, but I'm still worried. Either way, he'll be back soon. We'll have to fight the village too, she said, still looking quite tense. Speak for yourself. I won't be able to do anything. Makoto said. Tonight would finally be the execution of Minato's plan against Konoha's leadership. And she couldn't participate, which was frustrating in her current condition. But she accepted it. She needed to replace her eyes soon, and Minato didn't leave her out because he didn't need her tonight. You know Minato wants to use his powers against the 4 nations. His battle isn't today, Makoto. And I'm going to stay to protect you from any attackers. Suna decided, with a confident tone, sitting beside the Uchiha girl. I know. What worries me is Kushina and Hanabi, Makoto murmured. Minato said he would bring Hanabi to a safe place. As for Kushina, he predicts they'll try to kidnap her. But she'll be fine. According to Minato, she can take care of herself now. No one will kidnap her again. You saw her skills on Mount Mayaboku, Tsuna said. Makoto nodded, before Tsuna simply began pacing back and forth again. Meanwhile, in the underground of the Senju clan, Tsunade stood with her arms crossed, staring at a cross-legged clone of Minato in front of her. So you marked the girl and her grandfather? Tsunade asked. Yes, Minato replied. I placed enough chakra for this clone to withstand anything until the end of the day. I intend to pull them out once things heat up. Don't you think they might also go after others you know? She couldn't help but ask. I don't think the village would take hostages from an orphanage. As for the Might family, I spoke with Due. I told him to stay alert, since they might target him, but I believe he won't be important enough to be taken hostage. I'm only worried about my fiancé. With the Hyuga clan showing up, they've been getting pulled into the Hokage's cause from what I've noticed, based on their movements and how they were watching Hanabi, especially how they looked at me when I went to see her today. Let's hope it works out, kid. But you seem more worried about the village than your original body, right in the middle of an ambush with 5 teams, from what you said. Maybe more. Tsunade will be joining them too. But that doesn't matter. The clone spoke with a maturity that felt strange to Tsunade. I'm fine with it. I've revealed a lot over the years, but I never showed the full extent of my power. Either people didn't survive or couldn't really understand how my ability worked. But starting today, that's going to change. I won't hold back anymore. I'll show skills that surpass even my space-time jutsus. Minato said. Even though he hadn't mastered techniques as grand as a conqueror's haki, he had countless other abilities that could get him out of any kind of situation. And he was more powerful than the Hokage, though it seemed the Hokage didn't know that. Tsunade simply nodded, saying nothing, while Minato formed a seal with his hands and some scrolls beside him began to vanish. They began to appear in all the locations of the clans Minato trusted, to prepare their members for tonight. So it will be tonight. Tsuna murmured. I almost feel ashamed. Only my brother and I are taking part in this. She didn't let it sound sad. The Senju clan had deteriorated to the point where only 2 members were fighting. Meanwhile, all the clans Minato trusted began receiving their scrolls, as each of the leaders observed the contents, nodding and secretly gathering their men. They began to prepare discreetly. They would have the entire afternoon for that. At the same time, the Hokage was walking through the village. At that moment, he sighed, heading toward the gate of one of the clans, the Nara clan, where he appeared without any warning, wanting to speak with the leader. He would corner them, claiming to know their plan and saying he wasn't seeking conflict, but rather a peaceful resolution. He stated that, as sad as it was, the village had decided on the end of the Uzumaki, and that everything, in the end, aimed to preserve peace. Even though they had sacrificed people outside the land of fire, Konoha couldn't do much. Uzushigakure wasn't exactly Konoha's responsibility. It wasn't worth entering another war over ideals that, according to him, no longer applied to the good of the village, protecting a place outside Konoha's domain and an independent village. The Hokage planned to do this to weaken the entire group, removing Minato and at least cornering some of the clans. He was certain this would significantly weaken any possible civil war, lowering the dissatisfaction with the village leadership, calming all tempers, and maintaining Konoha's stability. That was his hope. Danzu, on the other hand, didn't think that way. The old man was in his base, looking over a railing at the floor below. I want you to look for any suspicious movement in the village. Investigate each clan throughout the afternoon. I want to know who's raising shinobi to fight against the village. And also be ready to eliminate anyone who raises their weapons, no matter who it is. For now, monitor. Bring me information if anything happens tonight. We'll eliminate everyone. Danzu said, as most of the Umbu began to vanish from there. One group remained still. I want you ready to capture the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. The Hokage has already authorized her entry into the Senju clan and to pass through the sentries, he informed, while the group nodded and disappeared as well. They would study a way to act, to capture the Jinchuriki and also kill the Uchiha in the Senju clan. Show yourself. Danzo said finally, as a ninja appeared at his side. I want you to go find the Hyuga. They participated in the reconnaissance mission using the Byakugan. We'll have all the information we need from that, he said, and the ninja vanished. Danzo was left alone in that place, while his eyes gleamed, determined to eliminate all threats against Konoha. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge? What if Transmigrated to Medieval Pokemon World? What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. I'll take the top pick and start working on that series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.